have something very fun for you today. We have with us once again Sharon Lovejoy, who's a children's author and also contributing editor for Country Gardener magazine. And Sharon, thank you so much for coming back.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, we've got quite a conglomeration here you brought with your little handy bag here. What does all this have to do with the garden?
Well, let's start with the bag. I like to carry a group of tools that help kids explore the garden in the off season and during the growing season too. Not just kids, but grown-ups too.
Big kids, huh?
Big kids like us. So any kind of a tote bag would work. This just happens to be a special one that I have. And why don't you just grab whatever you wish to talk about.
Now this is
a wonderful pliable magnifying glass, which is so great for little kids who are a little bit klutzy with magnifying glasses and may tend to drop them. And you can see it has a lot of condensation on it, but you can just put it right up to something and see the insides of flowers and nectar guides and bugs.
This is great.
This is a magnifying glass as well. This is about $1.69 and available just about anywhere. Another magnifying glass, a little bit finer to get up close so that kids can really see things, because there are a lot of things that you just glance at and you don't really look at, and this helps you get to the heart of the matter.
Just spend a little bit more time checking it out.
Well, also, we don't want children to think that gardening's all work. So if you can take your toolkit out and get your explorer's tools out, then they see gardening in a different light. They realize that it's a daily adventure. There are lots of wonderful things going on.
Great. Okay, so the tape measure.
Let's see, Brenda.
Yeah, we don't want to use that on me.
Well, the tape measure is because kids sometimes don't notice the rapid growth going on in a garden. So it's kind of a neat thing for you to measure them and to measure, say, a walking stick cabbage or corn or sorghum or the girth of a pumpkin, because you know a pumpkin in its later stages of growth, when it's really putting on weight, can grow inches and 20-25 pounds a day.
Wow.
A Dill's giant pumpkin. So this is a great way, and the kids can chart this in a journal. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to skip down here. It's always been my practice to keep a journal, and every day I go out and I walk through the garden and I write things that are changing, the kind of birds that are visiting, just anything going on in the garden. And I think that that's a great way for children to really, again, look up close at what's happening in a garden. They can write poems. That brings poetry and literature into the garden. They can write short stories. They can do science. They can do all sorts of things. And really, it's a keepsake that you'll love for the rest of your life and the rest of their lives, too.
So, you've also got a collection of bugs here and this nice handy little jar.
Well, haven't we all collected fireflies and enjoyed them? This is my viewing cage for critters, and the important thing is to not leave them in there, not to place them in the sun, but to gather them, to observe them with something like the magnifying glass, get a really up-close view of them, let the kids watch how they do their things, how they clean their antenna and where they keep their pollen, or put a leaf in there with a caterpillar. It's such a neat observation thing. We just have a little bit of nylon mesh on top. It's really easy to bend and the kids won't cut themselves on the edge. It's a great tool too.
That's a good idea. So, now this looks about like our flexible, except this is not flexible.
It's plexiglass.
Okay.
And I think it's important for kids to realize that lots of magical things are going on in the garden underground too. So usually what we do is we scoop soil onto a sheet of plexiglass. And let me just suggest that plexiglass is expensive, but I've had great luck having it donated to me. If you just explain to a framer that you're a teacher, an educator, a scout leader, a 4-H leader, they'll give you scraps. And so what we do is we scoop soil with all the critters and worms in it, and then the kids can get underneath it and really see the underground world of what's going on in the garden. It really works neat. You can get quite larger pieces too. And if you read my book, I also use this to do flower pictures right in the soil in the garden. We actually do stepping stones with plexiglass with flowers pressed underneath it right in the soil.
So now
lots of uses for those free pieces of plexiglass.
These are what I'm very curious about.
Here you go, Dr. Brenda. This is one of the neatest things. We want kids to enjoy all of the senses in the garden, and we don't often think of the sense of hearing, but this is so important to get a glimpse into, again, the hidden world in a garden. And the thing that kids have to be careful of is moving this around too much, because it will pick up a lot of disturbing noises. But a lot of times I'll start by letting children listen to their own heart, and then letting them listen to the heart, what they call the heart or the life of a tree. You can hear sap rising, you can hear critters gnawing. If you're lucky, you'll hear birds on the tree. You can hear them taking in water, and every tree and every pumpkin and every tomato has a different voice, and it's so neat. Some of them sound like they have an upset stomach with gurgling and growling. Others have a ping, ping, ping as they drink. A willow has an absolute as it's sucking in water. You can hear the sap rising in maple trees.
Wow.
You know, so spring, summer, and fall, this is a great tool to have. And even when it's not spring, summer, or fall, kids can still listen to their own hearts and the hearts of their friends and other things. And these are very inexpensive.
I was wondering about that.
Well, you can find them in any pharmacy. They're about $6.95, $7.95. I suppose when you're a doctor, yours are a lot more expensive than that. But this one is a tool that I love just to keep outside in the garden, or to keep in a handy place, because it's so much fun, especially listening to the vegetables.
I'm going to have to try that.
Well, a lot of kids are afraid to go outside in a garden at night, and you know from being a real gardener that some of the most magical things happen at night. And so an essential part of the Kids Explorers Kit is a flashlight, to go out and to watch the evening flowers opening, like the nicotianas. And if you've ever noticed during the day, the nicotiana may droop and look tired, but at night it lifts its head, and it's called nyctotropism. And kids can watch that, and they can watch evening primroses opening, and then they can watch the critters that come to pollinate them. And it's a good way for kids to learn that the longer the neck of the throat of the flower, probably the longer the tongue of the proboscis of the pollinator. And a sphinx moth, which is a tomato hornworm, or other hornworms, is a great thing to see at night with a flashlight. And you can see bats and all the critters that are essential to a healthy garden.
Great.
Also, if you shine it around the low part of the garden, you can see the glowing eyes of green lacewings. They're golden red, and they look fabulous, and you can see cricket eyes and all sorts of things. It's a good thing to make kids not afraid of the night. Finally, my trusty and inexpensive Polaroid camera. For a lot of children who don't have family albums, when I'm teaching groups, I always try to take pictures of children in the garden, because they need to have good memories of their childhood. A lot of inner city kids have no memories, have no scrapbooks. So I always urge teachers to invest a little bit in film and give each child a picture of them working in the garden or caring for something special. That may be the only good memory a child has. Also, you can record. You can stand next to your corn in July and in August and in September, or your giant sunflower or your morning glories, and keep track, and then tuck them into your journal.
It's a good way to record that.
Yes, and it's not expensive either.
Well, Sharon, this is a neat, and you call this an explorer's kit.
Explorer's
These are all the
kit.
tools that you need to really explore the garden with children. And all of these items, you actually have a new book that you have all of this in, and a lot of other good information about gardening with children.
And it's simple, I think. I have about a dozen different projects for grown-up people to do along with children. And of course I wrote and illustrated it, and I have the top 20 plants for children, and I have the theme gardens, including container gardens for those kids who live in an area where they don't have backyards. And then lots of fun projects like a Zuni waffle garden, Native American Zuni waffle garden in Three Sisters. Lots of folklore, lots of history, and over 4 dozen craft projects, so that again, like the Explorer's Kit, you're extending the gardening experience all through the year, and that's really important. In the back, resources, all the neat seed catalogs and worm suppliers and bug suppliers that kids can send off for. So this is a 12-month-a-year gardening book.
That's great, and it's a good resource for anybody that's interested in getting kids more interested in gardening and just with their world.
That's right.
So thank you so much for coming over, Sharon.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me back. I love it here.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge. both classic and contemporary.